Good morning and welcome to the Lancaster Criminal Justice Commission meeting on Wednesday the 10th, and we'll go ahead and get started. I'd like to call this meeting to order at approximately 10:03. Brett, you could do roll call for us, please.
Commissioner Brown.
Present.
Carter.
Present.
Harris.
Present.
Smith.
Present.
Vice Chairman Little.
Present.
Chairman Vieira.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Little, if you could lead us in the flag.
Rise, please. Place your hand over your heart. Repeat with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, and we're going to be starting off this morning with a presentation from LEAPS.
Good morning. And thank you for the invitation to give you an update on LEAPS. Don't know how many of you are that familiar with it. We again extend the invitation to the Commission. We'd be happy to give you a behind-the-scenes tour and let you see it up close and personal. Today we'll give you an overview of where we came from, where we're at, and what are some of the possibilities for the future. The LEAPS itself is kind of unique, and then it was a collaborative effort between the City of Lancaster, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, and a number of small businesses here in Lancaster and in the Antelope Valley to produce something to improve the safety of our community and those who protect it. So Lancaster, M&H Aviation out at Fox Field, AeroView, which is a company we formed to actually do the operations, and Spiral Technology, which did the system development. Here's the first set of marks here, and I assume these go in the record so they're available for people to go in and look at up close and personal. Starts with the initial validation of this approach and process was done at NASA Dryden back in the early 70s with a Piper Apache 30. There had been remotely operated aircraft before, but they were usually Thunderbolts right after World War II used as targets. It actually started in Yuma, Arizona between Frank Visco and myself. He was down there with us, and we were chatting about what we could do for the community and what a small business could do for the community, and that's what really precipitated this. He spoke with Mayor Paris and gave us an opportunity to meet with the City of Lancaster to tell them what our capability was in systems engineering and integration. That resulted in a very productive 6-month effort with the Sheriff's Department in coming up with a set of requirements that would meet a price point that the City of Lancaster could handle. A tremendous amount of give and take on both sides. Things like protecting the evidentiary chain, the ability to control from the dispatch center, all those things were went over, formalized, and that's what the system was designed on. AeroView was organized in October of 2011. We signed the agreement with the City of Lancaster, AeroView did, in November, the end of November, and AeroView issued a subcontract to Spiral to start the actual development of that system. LEAPS started operations 25th of August in 2012, operating out of the dispatch center. We did some media events with the City of Lancaster and the Sheriff's Department in December of that year. We started doing some demonstrations to people outside of the law enforcement community, and our beta tested ended in October of 2013, and that's when the actual revenue flow started for the companies. Since then, we have been looking at new technologies, what can be infused into LEAPS 1. We have made internally many improvements based on very productive input from those that actually operated on a day-to-day basis in the Sheriff's Department. Minor enhancements, but we've continued to look at the technology that we can infuse. A lot of the technology that's being infused and can be infused into LEAPS is a direct result out of an agency in the DoD called DARPA, where they ask for new ideas to be developed. And we are in the process of transitioning those locally at a non-DoD price. LEAPS itself, the LEAPS aircraft, the City of Lancaster's aircraft is a 1978 Cessna 172N with that tail number. We operate daily, 7 days a week, 13 hours a day, and that's done by AeroView LLC. They're operational. The sortie times are lengthened and adjusted by LASD based on what their requirements are for a particular day or a particular season. And normal hours on Monday through Thursday are 0700 to 2030 hours, and Friday and Saturday from 10:30 to 23:30 hours. Maintenance is all done by local small business. M&H Mykeeny's operation out at Fox Field takes care of maintenance of the aircraft. We have 2 Lycoming engines. We can do a complete engine change-out, which we do about every 2,200 hours overnight, so that when the last start of the day is flown, his folks immediately get in, swap out the engine, start the initial run-ups and tests, and we're ready to go the next morning. The LEAPS aircraft, when we bought it, had a little over 5,000 hours on it, and as you can see up there now, it's over 13,000 hours. Usually the normal life is about 20,000 hours. We have been indeed fortunate with this aircraft, and part of that reason is because of the maintenance that's done on it. It is in good health right now. The one system that we keep in mind, though, is the actual optical sensor. The company that provided that to us, we here, you in Lancaster, LASD, you are the benchmark for longevity of this system. We are now well beyond 3 times the number of hundreds of hours that one had operated. So it's been performing. With those hours up there, there are some weeks where we actually conduct a 50 and 100-hour FAA mandated inspection in the same week. So, High Desert Avionics does all our avionics repair, antenna mounting, those kinds of things on the aircraft. And then Spiral, we take care of the airborne systems, the ground control system, the archival retrieval system, and training of deputies that use the system. We've had an influx of new people using the system here in the last 2 months, and we've done a lot of the training. And there's some folks that are definitely adept at doing this in LASD. Next, please. Statistics-wise, we do not have access to the law enforcement statistics. What kinds of operations happen, how many of them were there, what the success. That is part of the evidentiary chain that's protected, that was required. This is one that we can show you. That's from the end of May 2014 to the end of May 2015. Those are the number of sorties flown per day by day. The dispatches that were done. That's a direct dispatch from the dispatch center in the Lancaster office or station of LASD. Next. These are some of the things that we've been working on for the future to provide a tactical, mobile capability in discussions with the city and with the Sheriff's Department. That would be an advantage, particularly to officers that are and deputies that are in the remote sections of the covered area. We demonstrated that at LASD's request on a deployment here in Lancaster. It was a tripod mount, and it's operated by a portable generator. It was incorporated into the big 1800 control center that was brought up from down below. We have further developed a portable system that's vehicle skin mount that can either be run off of a portable generator or the power from the vehicle. It magnetically mounts it could magnetically mount on a patrol car and give that patrol car the same capability that exists in the dispatch center as far as dispatching the aircraft and seeing what's going on. Remember in LEAPS, the aircraft is controlled by the deputy. The pilots for AeroView that fly the aircraft are mule skinners. They're driving the airplane and that's it. They do not see what goes on. That's captured, encrypted, sent to the ground, recorded. In addition, we have been looking at advanced sensors. The sensor on the Leaps aircraft now is about 4-year-old technology. There are some brand new systems out there, and I'm going to show you some examples here later, vastly improved over what can happen. The Venator is a system that was developed by a small company that worked on the dark side for several agencies within the federal government, and this has now been able to be applied outside of that environment. Much higher resolution. It's a high-definition picture, and it has low-light color capability that's pretty impressive. Its infrared system is probably the most dramatic improvement over what we're using today in Leaps 1. It is autofocus, plus it has a Stirling engine in it, which allows the back plane of the infrared sensor to be cooled. That ups the resolution many, many, many times. And you'll see a drastic difference in the two of them. But that's available today. In addition to that, this sensor is waterproof. As the Sheriff's Department can tell you, there are days when we can't go up because of we'll call it high humidity in the air. Some people call it rain in the air, so we don't go up. This one is sealed and nitrogen purged, so it will operate just fine. Where it was developed to operate, oftentimes it's very, very humid in that environment, and it was meant to operate that. We have another one, the TASE 310, that's also available. Again, it is high resolution, but that particular sensor does not have an infrared capability, but its visible spectrum is impressive, and I've got some examples of that for you also. This is the visible spectrum that officers use today at the dispatch center, and this is a piece of video that was captured and released to us by LASD as something we could use. This is a fire that happened over at the laundry facility that's on Avenue A. And this is just a normal view with today's system of one of the major thoroughfares here in the Antelope Valley. This one is actually an operation responding to a call, and the suspects, again, this is released to us by LASD. This shows the suspects were contained in this area, and you can see the patrol vehicles that are around tightening that containment. This is the Venator that I spoke of earlier. This is the visible system today. It is much higher resolution, which you can see. It's also a lot smoother. We just finished some final testing on that about a month ago, and we have asked them to tweak the human-machine interface that an actual deputy would be using so that it's easier to operate. These are clips that were taken here in the Antelope Valley. This is one of over a parking lot. You can see it's tracked in on an individual walking in the parking lot. And by the way, this is from 3,000 feet, 3 miles away. This is the normal parking lot, again, just to show what the capability is today. You say, gee, that's kind of bouncy like the other one was. Yeah, it was. The wind was really blowing that day. Here's where you'll see a big improvement. That is today's infrared spectrum that officers have to use. That was the best that was available at this price point 3.5 to 4 years ago. That was the best. You can see the objects. You can see them move, but the resolution just isn't there. It was manual focus also. This is the one that we just finished tasting. That is an infrared shot. It looks like black and white. No, that's actual infrared capture of video. Go up a little further there, Dan. Just, you see different snippets of what happens. This is from 3,000 feet. Now then, this is the Venator's night capability in the, yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't want to block out. Okay, this is the night capability of the Venator visible spectrum. Here we are back to the infrared capability. And go a little bit further. And there's that same scene using the visible spectrum camera. And you can see the people running. We had one flight over Jet Hawk Stadium in infrared where we watched the pitcher release the ball. We could see the ball because it was hot from his hand, and watched him strike out a guy. And we were visible distance, or distance, measurable distance away, we were about 5 miles out. So in essence, what's being observed doesn't know they're being observed. Okay, shall we go to the next? This is the new TASE 300. This was shot up in the Bay Area. You'll notice that's very, very good resolution. That is broadcast quality resolution. And this is on one of the freeways up in the Bay Area, tracking on a vehicle. We do a lot of work to be sure that if, in essence, the deputy has selected to get on a particular vehicle, that when it gets into traffic, that we maintain the track on that particular vehicle they've selected. And this just shows a scene where there's been an incident on the freeway, which could happen, and what you're actually able to see. Typical parking lot. Now this is the TASE 310's visible capability at night. That's also a lacrosse game, which you don't get to see very often. They take a soccer field and kind of round it out. Of course, this is under the lights of the field, but it gives you an idea of the capability of that camera as far as resolution is concerned. If you watch and can figure out who's got the ball in their stick, you can actually see it when it's passed. There's a picture of people that are in the stadium watching the game. Now then, this is still the visible spectrum camera, but this is at night, in the same place where we took the video earlier in daylight. You'll notice there is some pixelation because it is night and there's not a lot of ambient light. Those are some of the pieces that are available today that we have tested. And that's really an overview of LEAPS. It is an effective tactical and strategic law enforcement tool to help protect our community and those that protect it. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them.
Mr. Moore.
Yes, sir.
First of all, I have to apologize to you because you extended an invitation to me here a month ago, and I haven't been able to meet that. So I'm looking forward.
Extend it.
I'm looking forward to that, sir.
Okay.
So on their chart that you had up there on the dispatches
Yes, sir.
per day, is that on the daily averages? How many daily averages?
That's not a daily average.
Okay.
Those are actuals per day.
Those are actuals per day in
Yes,
a
sir.
year's time.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And how many per day are we? Can you justify on that as far as how many we're getting per day, or is it just an accumulation of the whole year?
This is the accumulation of the whole day on a day-to-day basis. It varies from none up to, there was one day there was a tremendous amount of activity where, and I don't know what that activity was, but there were over 20 dispatches made that single day. That single day.
In that 13-hour period?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
That's affirmative.
The equipment that you were showing is, now there's obviously newer equipment out, obviously.
Yes.
Okay. And the resolution, pictures, night vision would all be enhanced?
Yes.
Okay. And that's something that you're looking at now?
We have finished testing it to our satisfaction. That's something that could be used. Those pictures were the actual flight tests that we have run here locally on an aircraft out of M&H Aviation here locally, and out of another FBO up in the Bay Area with the actual cameras that were in the picture. We have verified those that they do work in our system, yes. And still meet the price point. There are some other cameras that are made by companies like L3 that you can take the price point and multiply by 10.
What is the price? What is the price point?
The price point for a camera like that runs on the order of $300,000 to $450,000 based on what you actually want in this sensor head itself.
Wow.
The ones from L3Com that you see a lot that Channel 4 uses and Channel 9 uses, those go for about $2.5 million a pop.
And as far as the 13 hours per day, that can vary.
No, the 13 hours a day is what we
Okay.
have a contract with the city of Lancaster to
And and
provide.
it stays within that.
No, we have a contract to provide 12 hours of observation. In order to do that, we need an extra hour to account for changes in sorties, changes of pilots, or refueling.
Thank you, sir.
You're more than welcome.
So I do have a question, and I promise, being in aviation myself, I will not ask too many technical questions. But I was looking at the flight hour usage and
Yes.
the service life, and it looks like it's about 3.5, maybe 4 years left with the current op tempo. Is there a succession plan for the 172?
We have not issued any plan with the city, but we are prepared to do that. We keep track of available 172s, a very cost-effective airplane when compared to a helicopter. Operations between rotary wing and fixed-wing aircraft vary by at least an order of magnitude, usually more. There is one aircraft operating in New Jersey that we do have specific data on, and it costs law enforcement back there $5,500 and change per hour.
And just, if I may, we entered
Mark.
into a 5-year contract with, essentially a 5-year contract with the company. The city does own the plane, and, it will perform during that contract period. And then as we get to the last, year and a half, then we need to start evaluating and decide, what we want to do going forward. I did have a question if it was asked. I apologize. What is the average per day based on that chart? If that was asked, I apologize.
The average for day, Mark, is between 5 and 7.
So that's 5 and 7 times. It's
Dispatches.
specifically asked by dispatch to go.
Dispatches, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
And the other question I had is on the mobile command unit.
Yes.
The ones that's going in the car. Is that going to integrate into the existing electronics in the car, the computers that's already in the patrol cars, or is there another piece of equipment?
We can do that. Is it integratable? Yes.
That's
I have not had a law enforcement vehicle so where to actually test that integration, but I've tested it on other ones, and it is all done wirelessly, yes.
okay. Thank you.
It would give the officer or the deputy in the patrol car the same view that's seen in the dispatch center, and capability to redispatch the airplane.
Other comments, questions? No? Thank you very much.
You're
Mr.
more than
Moore.
welcome.
Very enlightening. We'll go on to public business from the floor, and this is agendized items. Citizens who would like to address the Criminal Justice Commission on any agendized item may do so when the item is being considered by the commission. If you haven't already done so, please complete a speaker card and identify the agenda item you'd like to discuss. And speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. Okay. We'll go ahead and move on to the consent calendar. You've had a chance to take a look at that and entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion we approve the minutes.
Any discussion, questions?
Yes, should I be voting on this? I was not present for it. I wasn't commissioner, so I would not be voting, correct?
Correct.
Abstain.
I second.
Call for the question. Thank you. And we will move on to new business. And this is new business item 1, discussion of the proposed addition to the Lancaster Municipal Code relating to nuisance gatherings and social host accountability. I believe, Mr. Drico, were you going to come up and?
Yes, sir. I can do it from here, or I can do it from up there. What's your preference?
Whatever you're comfortable.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chairman Vieira. I want to state, as we go into this, this has been something that the Assistant City Attorney and I have been working on for some time, mainly Jocelyn, probably 90% of this is put together by her. But as you'll see in this, we've incorporated a couple of issues that we've brought forward. We've talked about chronic nuisance issues and an ordinance that how we impacted that ordinance and how it was utilized in our community to deal with nuisance properties or continued, mostly for absentee owners, specifically to certain addresses. And then along the same time, we've been discussing issues we've had with parties and social gatherings and social host gatherings to make more accountability for those individuals that are involved in that type of activity. Through Captain Nelson's department, we learned over a 2-year period the Sheriff's Department had responded to over 7,300 parties within our community in 2 years, which is significant. Okay, and if you look at approximately 50,000 calls a year or so that the station's very busy, that's a significant number impact on one specific issue. So along with those other issues come along with the issues related to underage drinking, the instances of abuse of alcohol and a nature that leads to other criminal behavior that deputies have to respond to beyond the party aspect. And again, based on resource management and recovery of resources back to make the public whole based on dealing with those issues, that's where this has come about. So I'll let Jocelyn take over from this point to talk about the ordinance itself, and then we can discuss it.
So you'll recall over the last few months, we've had some conversation here about revising or streamlining the chronic nuisance property ordinance itself, but in conjunction with this whole unruly gathering thing that's a generator of a lot of the calls for service over the weekend, it kind of made sense to put all of that together into one ordinance. The chronic nuisance property ordinance is a very useful tool, but I think as we've discussed here, it has some procedural steps that tend to make it a little unwieldy. It sucks up a lot of city resources in terms of staff time reviewing on a regular basis the calls for service logs and then processing the notices, processing the invoices for the penalties and so forth. So this proposed ordinance is intended to streamline that process by authorizing law enforcement and other public officers to immediately issue an administrative citation to people who are responsible for unruly gatherings, whether it be disturbing the peace or underage drinking or a whole variety of disorderly type conduct that happens at these kinds of events. It also allows for us to reach out to the property owner if he or she is not at the property at the time of these gatherings. Based on sort of the totality of the circumstances, we can cite that property owner immediately. I think typically we probably wouldn't do that. We'd probably give them a warning the first time, and then if there's further incident, we would proceed with that. Similar to the Prop 47 ordinance that was adopted by Council earlier this year, we've made the penalties pretty stiff, deliberately, to have this really work as a deterrent. People get one $500 penalty. I think it's going to get their attention, and that's the plan. So it's the first penalty is $500, and every penalty citation thereafter is $1,000. There is an appeal process, so they get their due process rights. It's done with an independent hearing officer. It'll be done here at City Hall, but it will be an independent person. So I think it covers what we're looking to cover. I think in streamlining it and making it sort of mirror the Prop 47 ordinance, we're going to have a more coherent, cohesive approach administratively to these kinds of issues.
And I think if you look at just by calculating the cost for resources, and as we average out the cost for a deputy sheriff, an average call in the nature based on the work we did with Pat's folks was, anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes based on the size of the gathering. It could be extended beyond that, but if you average that across, that's hundreds of thousands of dollars a year that we're spending responding to these situations. Some of them are typical every weekend gathering at certain locations. We also have issues where, parents are out of town and the kids decide to have a party, and then social media and being what it is and everything, the thing obviously expands beyond their control. So every case is a case-by-case evaluation based on the sheriff's deputy or how we're enforcing that ordinance and what's appropriate. And of course, common sense comes into play. So, we obviously don't want to penalize someone that's not aware unless that behavior continues. On the other side of it is on these habitual type issues, that's going to get expensive for them. Or let's say we make a property owner aware of a problematic location. As long as they're working with us for remedy, then that's obviously something we've discussed that we're going to work with those folks. We don't want to be punitive that way. And again, in the spirit of typically what we do with our ordinances here locally is we want compliance. We don't want to be punitive. We want to change the behavior so it quits impacting, especially the Sheriff's Department resources, because if you look in the spectrum of priority of what issues are occurring in our community, this is a nuisance issue. A lot of this is nuisance. Now, it could have other issues that relates back to the social host aspect of this thing that involve alcohol and those things that come from that type of behavior. At the same time, our deputies are busy. They have other things that they should be doing as far as fighting crime than going and dealing with issues as those presented here in chronic nuisance over and over again.
Question. In respect to the landlord situation, when you say you're going to work with them, a particular situation may be we have a tenant that has become a nuisance through this ordinance. You're going to notify the landlord. It's going to take him a while to take the necessary steps to correct it, but you're going to work with the landlord or the property management company in that respect.
Yes, sir. I think the point is once they're aware and they take action, it's kind of the typical thing back with, let's say you had someone that was dealing narcotics out of a house, okay? And if you were going to prosecute them for maintaining a place for that known activity, there's steps for that. But as long as someone's cooperating with you and taking the steps, and we all know what you're talking about here as it relates to what it takes to get rid of a problematic tenant these days. That's a significant process these days based on challenges and that kind of thing. There has to be consideration for that, okay? And of course, if there's other things that are more in line beyond the scope of the ordinance to deal with that issue, then we'll take that necessary step. The Sheriff's Department will, or we as a city, to eliminate that problem so it doesn't keep spilling over into the neighborhood while the landlord is taking this process. But I think more what this is an uncooperative landlord, as we're talking about in the idea of this, and that we've made that notification and they're still not taking the necessary steps to deal with that issue, whatever we may seem appropriate at the time, then there's other actions that we can take beyond that.
Okay. Thank you.
Leah, 7,300 in 1 year?
2 years.
Oh, 2
But
years.
That's a lot of calls for service. I mean, if you think about it, in those type of calls. So the deputies currently stat calls for chronic nuisance. So they have a specific stat code that they apply in their daily logs that attributes to those type of properties. But when you think about that with parties, the city, we spend probably anywhere between $10,000 and $13,000 a month just for cars that patrol extra on Friday and Saturday nights to deal with issues with social gatherings. And again, a lot of those are redundant. Our last process was so cumbersome, as Jocelyn pointed out, that by the time we were making the notification, this incident was allowed to occur over time, and we were always playing catch-up. This is much more streamlined, and I think will be much more effective to get people's attention. And as we all know, typically certain behavior, until you get in someone's pocketbook, doesn't change, okay, or impact them in some way negatively financially. So that's kind of the theory behind this. But again, compliance is the goal. Okay, I would love for Pat to be able to come to us, the commission, and say, hey, we've reduced this many responses to those type of activity this month. And because of that, the deputies were more proactive in other areas that we needed to address issues in our city. As we talk about some of our areas in the city that we continually see as problematic. I'd rather use that. We're not going to eliminate the resource. We're going to use the resource somewhere else that's more appropriately to drive our crime rate down.
I have a question for you. You've addressed two of the issues that I had after reviewing, so I won't belabor those points. But I just saw recently where LA County is taking the responsibility for having to pay a fine before an appeal or your day in court. They're taking up that action. How is that going to affect? And this may be a broader question, but how does that affect the payment of penalty for this ordinance?
The payment of the penalty itself, in terms of collecting it, we're going to use whatever methods are available to us. In terms of paying the fine if somebody wants to appeal, it's not written into the ordinance, but if a person is unable to pay the amount of the penalty in order to get his or her appeal process, we will have a procedure in place for waiving the prepayment of the citation so that they can have their due process rights, and if the citation is not upheld, then they don't have to pay anything. With respect to if it is upheld or if they don't appeal, we'll use whatever methods we can to recover that money.
Well, I guess the question I was asking really talks to the responsibility to pay to appeal, and that's what I was reading that they were turning over, is that now you can have your quote unquote day in court prior to having to pay the penalty. Is that going to matriculate down to the city ordinances, or?
That's certainly something that we can look into. It hasn't really been an issue here, but we can certainly address that as need be. Currently, the way all of our appeal processes work is that you don't actually pay a fee to have your appeal, because that's inappropriate. You prepay the amount of the penalty, and if you prevail in your appeal, you get that money back immediately. Sort of a deposit, if you will. But if that's something we need to look into down the road, we absolutely would be open to doing that.
Thank you.
Sorry. One more. Lee, would this be in tune with businesses also that are loitering and covering young age that are selling beer wine? Because this would be adopted into. I think the city is looking at a new ordinance for. For beer and wine and licensing and like that. Would this be part of this that would indoctrinate into that?
Yeah, I think, obviously we'd look at that as far as if we could make it more broader as far as the coverage. Again, the spirit of it is to deal with nuisance issues, right? And certain activity, just like what we talked about with Prop 47 and streamlining a certain process based on the resource management for our site. Historically, what's happened is the community puts all these resources into things. Just like I can give you an example as it relates to restitution right now. The city's owed over $1 million in restitution right now, currently. There's no process in place for recovery through the court, so we convert all those over to civil judgment. Mr. Franklin's been very aggressive as far as managing that through the court and been a great partner in that. So now the city has different avenues it uses that traditionally, we talked about before, that the court doesn't use for recovery. We have other issues, and some folks have issue with that because it addresses certain things that are very personal for people, DMV fees, licensing, tax returns, all those type of things. But we must remember that the victim, in this case, is the community in these issues, based on the resource drain, have a right to be made whole. That's more prevalent in the law than anything, is that the community has a right to be made whole. I will say that I believe that wherever we can apply something that has a financial impact on folks to get their attention for compliance is something we should pursue any legal way we can possibly do that, only because it gives us that hold to gain that compliance. And again, we have to be fair and we have to be reasonable. We have to conform to the law as it relates to informal process. The other beauty of informal process is if they don't like the outcome, the appeal for them is to file in the writ court based on procedurally whether or not they were given due process. It's a much different system that currently occurs in the criminal system. Okay, so the standard's much different, and it's a preponderance of the evidence. So there's some value for that. Again, use discretion. The deputies have the discretion based on when they think it's appropriate. There's an evaluation process beyond that. Not nearly the level that's required from the district attorney, but at the same time that it's fair and reasonable in how the process is enacted and the impact it has on that individual.
Lee, within this appeal process, and you have a hearing officer, is this another layer, or is this something that already exists, or is it additional cost or resources that are being put to this?
For the other administrative citations that the city issues, that's parking and code enforcement related, property maintenance related administrative citations, there is already an agreement, a contract with an independent hearing officer. It wouldn't be additional resources.
Thank you. Other questions, comments?
What is the time for the nuisances? Is it say 3 in 3 months, 3 in 6 months, 3 in a year? How far would you go back and say, we've already addressed this?
Well, I would say this, is that we already have some on our radar right now, that habitual issues, okay, that we can deal with. I would say it would be over what's considered a reasonable period. Now, everyone's gauge is different. Like me, I've never had the police have to come to my house, ever, okay? So, and then I've had other folks that, that law enforcement might have to respond in their business situation 5 or 6 times, but it's not them that created it. It's someone's activity in there. So I think it's going to depend on what the situation is as we individually apply it. And we have some things that on our past ordinances, like, after this many times they got a letter, after this many times we had a response, we request for a hearing, all these things that were involved. Now it's more of, hey, here, we're going to get your attention here. We're going to issue a citation based on whatever we get generated on the criteria, and that deputies log that nuisance issue. So if they know from their continually responding to a location about an event, they're going to log that contact, and then we'll take a process from that point. So I don't want to I really avoid trying to rope ourselves into a specific guide that puts the onus on us, responsibility-wise, and to say, we screwed up, we didn't send them a letter at 3, so now we can't apply this, because there's no requirement in the law in any other spectrum of law enforcement that requires that process. And we have a tendency to do that. And part of what Jocelyn's working on right now is really looking at our ordinances and really where does it work for resource management, even here for us at staff time, as it relates to those issues. So we're going to do things that are appropriately statutorily and that are responsible. At the same time, the spirit, again, and I've said this several times, and I really mean this when we talk about ordinances, compliance is the goal. Code enforcement's goal is not to be punitive and issue fines. People think the city gets rich by issuing parking tickets. I can show you in there all day long that that's not the case. Okay, there's things we're required to do as a municipality under the law, and we do them. Some of them cost money, some of them are cost neutral, but trust me, we're not out there making money enforcing ordinances. Okay, we want compliance from folks.
I'd just like to make the comment that I think the ordinance is actually written very, very fairly to both parts, both the community and to the responsible party, in the event that something happens that's outside of their control. And this actually is written into the ordinance itself, that they're given the ability to talk to and to explain their side of it, which I thought was very important. So I appreciate the opportunity to review this and be able to have this dialogue.
And I also think with that too, Sheldon, I think looking at this ordinance and like you said, Mr. Dorico, as far as hitting somebody in the pocketbook to get them to wake up and look at something, I agree. Unfortunately, I have to agree with you on that. It gets them to sit up and say, I have to take responsibility on things that are going over and over and over again.
What about your habitual violators? Is there a retroactive thing, or is everything has to start fresh with this new ordinance?
I think in the spirit of fairness, if you will, we'd want to start fresh. I would suppose that the properties that we know are problems on the weekends, we're probably going to pay a little more careful attention to and get on those pretty quickly. But clean slate for now, absolutely.
Okay, again, I just echo what Mr. Carter said. As reading through this, very comprehensive, very clear. So whoever wrote the amendment, kudos to them. Does a very good job writing.
If I could just say, too, I appreciate you all reading it in advance and coming with your comments. It is very helpful. It does help shape the direction that we're headed, and we're going to do more of this as we move forward. I know that the City Council appreciates and respects your input, so we'll be doing this moving forward as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're going to move on now to Commission staff presentations, updates, and reports, and we will start with the arrest stats presented by, I'm sorry?
Can we get a recommendation from the criminal justice on what to do with this?
Sure you can. I'll make a recommendation here. You're looking for an action item, Mr. Christ, or just a consensus of direction, or?
Yes.
Okay.
If you're going to present it, that the Criminal Justice Commission looked into this, they approve it, they went through a public hearing,
I guess I would ask the commissioners then, do you feel that we've vetted through it to the degree that we're comfortable to give our support for the city council to now take and make a decision as to whether they want to amend their ordinance with this amendment that was brought forward to us today?
Yes, I do.
I'm satisfied with the amendment as written.
So consensus is clearly that the amendment was appropriate and concise, and that we would support it wholeheartedly.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So again, we're back on reports, arrest stats, and we'll start with LA County Sheriff's Department.
Good morning. Sorry, no presentation. I didn't know we were going to have a laptop. Some of the crime statistics for the month of May go as follows. For the burglary suppression team, they had 14 felony arrests, 6 search warrants. They had 2 warrant arrests, 8 Ramey warrants were issued. They recovered $43,000 worth of stolen property, and they also recovered 3 stolen firearms. For the narcotics team, their stats are as follows. They arrested 8 felony adults, no juveniles. They made 1 misdemeanor arrest. They got 63.14 grams of marijuana, 134 grams of meth or methamphetamine, and they recovered 912 marijuana plants. They conducted 7 search warrants and recovered 6 firearms. The statistics for Landcap team, they made 29 felony arrests, 8 misdemeanor arrests, 8 firearms were recovered, and estimation value of illegal narcotics taken off the streets is $66,000. No pretty pictures for this report, though. Any questions for myself before
Do you have the stats as far as how many were parolees of the arrests?
I don't have that with me. I do have that in my office. If you want to meet with me, I'll give you a card, and I'll be sure to get that to you, sir.
Okay.
And do you guys want that for next time?
Well, usually, yeah, that's usually what Mike would do.
Okay.
So let us know. We're still interested in AB 109, breakdown as far as how many are being reoffending.
Yes, sir. I will have that included in the next report.
Excuse me, Josh, could this be emailed to us prior?
Yes, Mr. Harris had brought that up.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know if you guys want to come to me with your emails or if you want to give you all a business card and just shoot me your contact information.
I haven't, just channeled that to us.
Okay.
So just make the information available to us and then Rick can send that out.
It'd be helpful if we had it ahead of time, we could,
I'll be sure to do that,
ask
sir.
any questions we have.
It's done about a week ahead of time anyways.
Great, thanks, Josh.
Right. Thank you, gentlemen.
One quick question. I'm new to the commission. Looking at this, roughly 17 firearms were collected. Is that
Are you looking at last month's or this
with the
month?
report you just read?
Yes. What page?
Well, no, you gave that the various reports. One was 3 firearms, one was 6, and the other was 8.
Okay, correct.
So my question is, as far as a high or low number, what is that is over a month's period of firearms that are actually confiscated?
You mean as far as like an average?
Yes.
I couldn't give you an average, sir. It all depends on the operations that the different teams conduct, not to mention the various pedestrian or traffic stops. It varies month to month as far as recovery.
That just caught my eye. It's a lot of firearms to be collected.
Well, I can tell you based on this report, just from the task force team aspect, because patrol's not always included in some of this, that it is a high month as far as the teams. But they've been very active too. And I think what we can do is Pat gave me some interesting statistics from the North region the other day as it relates specifically to Prop 47 arrests and reoffenders and some things that I think we want to start incorporating into this too, just for the dissemination of the commission as well as the public. Also, you'll see that we have the crime mapping presentation stuff is not here because we're revamping that. how we present that. It's, we've done the same thing consistently for some time. There's been some request from the commission and folks to try and relook at how we present that, and using some information from the Sheriff's Department and get more current on what Commissioner Smith just brought up. AB 109 impact, the impact of supervision, and some of these other things that Mr. Franklin's talking about with AB 2124 and specifically Prop 47. The numbers I saw on that, on actual reoffenders, how many of those cases were filed and everything, I think will be very interesting for you to see next month on how that is truly having an impact on us as far as frequency of crime.
And if anything you guys want included in my report, going with Mr. Del Rico, let me know. If it's within my power, I'll start including it into the monthly reports.
Thank you. And from the California Highway Patrol update.
Good morning, everyone. Just wanted to share some statistics. Our overall fatality accidents are below 38% below last year, so we're doing a pretty good job keeping people alive out there. Overall, our traffic collisions were slightly up, still 8% compared to year-to-date last year. DUI traffic collisions are down 35% compared to last year. DUI arrest down 45% compared to last year. Overall arrest down 27%. Motorist services, we've assisted over 500 people there in distress, disabled out in the county of LA. Month of May was click it or ticket month. Overall, we were 110% over last year. So we were pretty much looking for seatbelts during the month of May. And just to wrap up, we had 5 every 15-minute programs in the 1 in Acton, 4 here in the Antelope Valley, which impacted over 5,000 students as a whole. So we're doing progress in getting the word out there, the education when it comes to DUI. I wanted to share that with the council here today. Any questions?
No question, just a comment, putting on my education hat. Again, I'd like to thank you publicly, the Highway Patrol, for every 15 minutes and the coordination of all those resources bringing to the schools, and I can guarantee you it saves lives. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your support.
Okay, from District Attorney update.
Good morning. Looking at the statistics for May of 2015, it's the same trend that I've been talking about for the past several months. We see fewer felony cases filed this year or this month as compared to the month the same time last year. This year, for May, we had 264 felony complaints issued, whereas last year, for May of 2014, we had 322. So we're looking about 25-30%. And just looking at the various branches throughout the county, just to name a few, it's consistent. I mean, if you look at San Fernando, they've filed year-to-date 999 felonies as opposed to 1,700 this time last year. LAX, 1,100 this year compared to 1,500 last year. So it's just a pattern that's across the board. Pasadena, 462 last year, year-to-date. This year, 318. So we see these, it's that 25-30% fewer felonies, which ultimately I think was one of the major reasons for the implementation of 47, which it worked. There's fewer felonies. Van Nuys, this year, year-to-date, 1,110. Last year, this time, 1,721. So you continue to see fewer felonies filed. As far as misdemeanors go, in the Antelope Valley, and again, this isn't, it's all of Antelope Valley, it's just not Lancaster. we, in this year, for May of 2015, we filed 575 misdemeanors. Last year was 590, so it's about the same. Year to date, also about the same, tracking right around 3,000. There is also one case. I know theft is a big factor that everybody looks at, certainly in Lancaster and throughout the Antelope Valley. And I present this one case more just to, I'm very proud of the DA that was handling it, but this is standard what you'll see with the DAs that we have here in the Antelope Valley and how they take a very firm stance on crime that genuinely affects the citizens of the community. Carolyn Ye is the individual that handled this particular case. But I think it's relevant. This was actually a Palmdale arrest, but the two cities are symbiotic in a lot of ways. So there's, if you're committing crime in Palmdale, it's quite possible you're doing it in Lancaster and vice versa. But in this case, between November 6th and December 5th, the case is People versus Holmes, defendant and 2 juveniles, and this is just what was charged, so certainly there could have been more residential burglaries, but committed 15 res burgs in Palmdale. And the modus operandi was that one of the individuals would knock or ring a doorbell, see if anybody was home, and if no one answered, would go back to the residence, smash a window or kick in a door. Defendant would ransack the residence and take jewelry, electronics, etc. During the burglaries, the defendant also, for truly just to be vindictive, no other reason, would also vandalize the property. Keyed an expensive car in one of the garages, would dump coffee into a fish tank, killing the fish, dumping food in the fridge all over the floor just to let it spoil. There was a lookout. One of the juveniles was a lookout. The defendant would then go pawn much of the items that were taken. He was charged with 15 counts of residential burglary, also with several second-degree burglary counts for going in and pawning the items. Basically, this was a case where the defendant was, I'll take very low numbers, and the troops there in the AV, they know we're here to protect the community. So ultimately, the defendant was convicted and was sentenced to 40 years in state prison. And he's 23-year-old, and he's going to be doing this at 85%, so it's not your normal 50% credit. So there's someone clearly that's going to be off the streets, not victimizing this community, and he won't be getting out, assuming he behaves in prison until his late 50s. So it's just a case that I think the commission needs to hear about, some of the hard work that, not only that the sheriffs were putting in to get this case presented, but what the deputies, especially Michier in this instant, did to make sure we got a good and just resolution, and really did protect the public on this. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. I'm curious about the drop in felonies seems to be throughout the county, and there doesn't appear to be an increase in misdemeanors. In other words, it isn't a matter of shifting out of felonies and into misdemeanors. There seems to be an overall drop in prosecutions. Is that a decrease in criminal activity or a change in the way we're processing what we consider to be criminal activity?
I don't have a definitive answer on that. I would just, my own assessment would be the latter, that I assume there does have to be a real judgment at some point. If we're not, is the crime even worth all the time and effort it takes to process the particular case if it's just going to be a misdemeanor? When a deputy could be out in the field really working for, to protect the community from more serious offenses. So I would assume it's the latter. I don't have any hard statistical data on that. I am kind of surprised at the misdemeanors, and that's just the AV. I haven't really done a comparison throughout the county, but you would think that the numbers would be rising more on the misdemeanor side. Originally they were, and I don't see it certainly in the AV now anywhere near that. Let me just take a quick look. And even looking at the other courts year to date, Alhambra, May 2015, slightly higher at 2,200 compared to 2,050, but basically the same. Compton, which the Compton has the most misdemeanors filed. We're second, only 2 Compton. May of 2014, year to date for May of 2014, they had 3,217. This year, it's 2,830, so it is decreased as well. So you do tend to see, just looking at the numbers that I'm looking at, either a decrease or they're remaining constant. LAX is constant at 2,000. Long Beach is constant at 500. So that is an interesting, and I wish I had an answer to it, but I don't. But my guess is it's just a way that how it's overall being addressed, not that there's fewer misdemeanors being committed.
I can tell you based on file numbers, it's not less. Okay, there's some issues, and that's why I want to bring forward some of the statistics that I got from the Sheriff's Department as it relates to Prop 47 and the enforcement and how those things are being managed, some of those cases with diversion. Okay, so I want to bring that forward to show you. There's active numbers of more and more folks that are doing actual street time based on some of this legislation that typically would not be on the street. And then, let's understand, 15 burglaries doesn't mean he only committed 15 burglaries. Okay, so there's some numbers, and if you look at, we need to look at how we're drawing file numbers, responses, all those things as part of the totality of this equation, not just based on filings or prosecution. Again, there's over 20,000 arrests in this community a year, but 180 to 190 felony trials a year. So there's things going on with those cases all through the whole process. So that's some of the things I want to start bringing to the commission on the impact of some of these things and what the effect is as it relates to even policies that change within departments or how those cases are managed before they even get to the district attorney's office.
Yeah, as soon as you get that together, Lee, I'd be very interested in seeing that.
Yeah, I want to bring it for a presentation the next meeting. Again, the numbers I saw were pretty disturbing. Okay, so those are things that we need to bring forward here and then discuss, okay, what are alternatives to these issues that we can do on a municipal level?
So, kind of summing it up for my edification, the number of felony arrests going down is strictly due to the price point and the type of crimes that can be committed. However, the number of misdemeanor crimes being filed, not necessarily rising congruently, is due to how they're being handled.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Nope. Thank you. Thank you very much. Item number 4, Business Watch Subcommittee Public Safety Update. Mr. Dorico.
Now, I've been excited about this for a whole month, and so is all the public safety team. You can see how happy they are right now. I'd like to bring in, to bring everyone up to speed on who our folks are. They do a great job, and we're always adding programs and reevaluating what we're doing. We're going through a whole audit of all the things we provide now. So I'd like each one of them to come up, introduce themselves, and just talk briefly, like 30 seconds. Who do I got to watch out for? Josh will say 10 seconds. Anthony will talk 3 minutes. Okay, but talk about what they're doing out there and how how they fit into our team. And you'll see a lot of folks are doing a lot of different things. So Tracy should be first, I believe. And we'll go from there.
Good morning, Dr. Vera and Commissioners. My name is Tracy Stewart, and I manage the Public Safety Office, the day-to-day operation. I oversee the Neighborhood Watch program, which consists of 243 active neighborhood watch groups. I assist Lee in managing the public safety contracts with the LA County Sheriff Department and Animal Control. I supervise 7 of the public safety staff. That would be the business licensing enforcement officer, 2 of our community service officers who support the LANCAP and burglary suppression teams, and also Amy Vasquez, who handles nuisance abatement and, chronic nuisance. I handle all the grant reporting for the public safety office for our community support programs, and I also do the grant reporting. Thank you.
Good morning, Dr. Vera and Commissioners. My name is Christy Slayton, and I am the Administrative Assistant for the Public Safety Department. So my main function is to take care of Mr. Dorico, try and make sure he's where he needs to be when he needs to be there. I schedule his appointments and his meetings, etc. I'm also the department clerical support. I do the calendaring, things like that. I answer phones, handle complaints that we receive both via the counter and through the phones related to quality of life issues, parking enforcement, just general complaints when they're upset with the Sheriff's Department or anything else that's going on. They make it their way to our phone line. I take care of all of the correspondence, the staff reports and things for our department. I process time cards, leave requests. I'm basically the paper pusher. And just I take care of our purchase orders. I monitor our budget, pay our invoices, manage our supplies. Basically just try and make sure that our department runs smoothly.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Dr. Vieira. Vice Chairman, my name is Anthony Perez. I am one of 2 public safety specialists currently working for the City of Lancaster. My counterpart, Officer O'Connor over there, that gentleman there, together we partner up. We handle a lot of the quality of life issues that when the Sheriff's Department is busy doing what they're doing, Ms. Slayton will take the phone call and we'll go out and we'll do a complete workup of the property, who's living there, if there's any type of criminal element involved, and we'll take that criminal element, submit that as a report to the Sheriff's Department, and they'll go ahead and handle it appropriately. On the flip side of that, we'll also be out there. You see me now dressed in professional attire, but don't be alarmed if I walk up to you and I'm in a basic street clothes, so to speak, an urban camouflage, if you will. So if I walk up and I say hello to you, I will be polite and professional, and we'll speak a little bit and see if anything's in the community that we can help you right there on the spot.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Scott O'Connor. I'm the other public safety specialist, and Anthony covered a lot of what we do, but we also mediate things that the Sheriff's Department doesn't have time to get into. We call in neighbors that can't get along, sit across the table from them and say, what is the problem, so that it stops creating calls for service for the Sheriff's Department. We abate vehicles that have been left dumped on the street in certain neighborhoods that have become homeless shelters or just trash dumps for people. We deal with quality of life issues that code enforcement has not been able to handle in the time they have, because they have to deal with rental inspections and stuff like that. So we will go and handle those and handle the elevated code enforcement issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm the Business License Enforcement Officer. My name is Deidre Tushner. I've been doing this position since 2006. I average about 400 calls a month collecting and enforcing the business license code for the city. We average in collections about 5,500 to 7,500 in my enforcement per month. Investigate delinquent licenses, help obtain the new businesses obtain a new license for the city. Work real close with finance, code enforcement, and the planning department. And I keep a daily log for Tracy Stewart, who's my supervisor, daily, monthly, and a year-to-date stat log for her. So it keeps track.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hawley.
Hi, my name is Nigel Hawley. I work with Public Safety. I am the Public Safety Mentoring Liaison. I work with the Antelope Valley Education Alliance, where we work over at Antelope Valley High School with the chronically truant youth. I work with Jennifer Pescaro, who's my partner, and one of our life coaches over there, and we basically help get the youth back on track.
Good morning. My name is Paul Jones. I'm part of the Public Safety Department. I'm with Parking Enforcement, and my job is to enforce the Lancaster Municipal Codes and the California Vehicle Codes. I go through the residential areas and pretty much enforce the street sweeping laws and ordinance, and I help out with not that loquacious, so I'm kind of nervous.
That's okay.
I help out with Neighborhood Watch. I help out with barking dog complaints, and we do a lot of special events as well. And we patrol the school areas and make sure that the parents are pretty much adhering to the pavement markings and the signage that's out there so that the children can have a safe crossing to and from the school facilities. And I really enjoy working for public safety, and that's the end of my presentation.
Yeah, thank you.
As you can see, everyone was a little nervous about doing it. They're doing a great job. Ricky. This one won't have any.
Hello, good morning. I'm the other parking enforcement officer. My name is Ricardo. Sorry, I didn't start that way. I've been on for seven years. 7 years. He pretty much took everything I was going to say, but I do translations with Teen Court, other translations. I pretty much do everything he does. Enforce California Vehicle Codes, Lancaster Municipal Codes. I enjoy what I do. I like serving the community, and I look forward to continue to do it. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Amy Vasquez. I work for Public Safety. I've been with the City of Lancaster for over 7 years. My main job is to handle restitution for the city. I handle all restitution, not just graffiti. Basically, any property damage where any criminal charges are going to be brought up against an alleged suspect, I go to court and testify on behalf of the city. Like Lee had said earlier, we are owed over $1 million in back restitution, and I'm currently working with both the juvenile court and the superior court on filing civil judgments for all the unpaid restitution that's owed to us. I was assigned to our chronic nuisance ordinance, but it is being revamped, so that's kind of on hold. But any nuisance type of activity that deputies have to respond to more than 4 times in a year, this will kind of answer your question, sir, then the homeowner and the tenants can receive a fine up to $1,000. Now, keep in mind, this is the old ordinance. My job would then to review the calls, and I send out a first notice. I send it to the property owner and also the tenant. We pull title to see who's on each. If they have a rental license, which is required by the City of Lancaster, we can also see where the correct mailing address is. A lot of times they don't have a rental license, and that's kind of why it's important, because I can sometimes send it to the home and the owner doesn't live there. It's a rental property, so they may not get it. After the 5th call, I send out a second notice, and then on the 6th call, they're finally fined. But that is being revamped, thank God. It's a lot of work, and that was my job. I occasionally respond to complaints in the field, quality of life issues. I assist with Neighborhood Watch. I work with public safety at all the city events. I handle parking enforcement complaints and hearings. I provide public safety announcements to the communication department upstairs. And customer service at the counter and on the phone. I attend Coffee with the Deputy the second Thursday of the month. I attend CJC, and I think that's it. Anything else? Do you guys have any questions? I'm scared.
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Jennifer Perscaro. I've been with Public Safety for about 9 years now, and although I've had many assignments and duties in that time, right now I am currently, as Mr. Hawley mentioned, over at Antelope Valley High School working on the Education Alliance and the Anti-Truancy Program. I had a whole spiel about that, however, 30 seconds is short, so I'm not going to go into it. But basically, we're just working with kids, trying to get them back in school, get them back in the classroom. We take walks to make sure that that happens, and we hold them accountable if they do not end up in class. The last several years, I have also coordinated the Poppy Festival with the public safety area and National Night Out, which is coming up in August, so I hope to see you there. Thank you.
That's about it. My name is Anne-Marie Mercer, and I've been a community service officer since 2006. I've worked with the city of Lancaster since 1999. My job is very diverse, and I will limit my speech to my 4 major components. I work with the youth in the community through the Antelope Valley Community Youth Court Diversion Program. I assist the citizens of the city of Lancaster by answering the public safety lines and with the walk-ups at the counter. I also patrol city events under the direction of my public safety director, Lee Dorico. I also help with anything and everything that is needed or asked of me through any of my coworkers and any of my supervisors. And that's pretty much all I do.
Thank you. Yes, it's a lot.
Okay, so we're looking at that right now on how we can work that different layers into that as well, because that is a huge activity. Fred, Michelle, I'll call you. I'm sorry. Keep looking at me like no, I'll speak for you.
My name is Greg Coleman. I work over at the Lancaster Sheriff Station with the burglary suppression team. I handle all the secondhand dealers and pawn shops in the city of Lancaster. I run all the We Buy Golds, the GameStops. They all have to report everything they take into the sheriff station. I run all those to see if the serial numbers are stolen, trying to match up jewelry with theft reports, so on and so forth. Also including guns, I run them. I usually catch those being stolen before the DOJ does. They're pretty slow. I'm also a fingerprint and DNA technician. I do fingerprints at burglary crime scenes as directed by the Sergeant of the Burg team. Occasionally, I also do fingerprints at crime scenes that the patrol is at the current time if they can't get the crime scene out there, or if they have an extended ETA and if it's out of business and they have to get back up and running. I'll go out there and do the fingerprints of the DNA at the business. Business friendly, right? I also assist with search warrants for the Burg team. If we're out there at the search warrant and I see a code enforcement problem, I'll call on code enforcement, so on and so forth, if there's any other aspects that the city needs to do. I also assist with, we also do the farmers market every week. We have to make sure that they can set up. We have to move, sometimes we have to tow some vehicles out of there. We try to avoid that. And then, of course, I assist with all the other city functions, all the 4th of July parties and all that kind of stuff that we do.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Morning.
With public safety, I'm assigned to the LANCAP team over at the station. I do SEPTED training and inspections for them, trying to make them more crime-free. So the managers usually contact me if they need a deputy to look into a certain location, say it's for drugs or burglary or whatever it is. Pretty much the first line, so they'd contact me, I'd send them out. as well as the latent fingerprint investigations, DNA collections, writing criminal reports. For the city, I handle animal noise complaints, towing vehicles, and as me and Scott learned the other day, furniture moving.
Thank you. Furniture moving was about the teen court, picking up the furniture that Judge Wesley was able to obtain for us, which turned out dynamite. I want to make sure that we invite you guys to our teen courts. They're quite interesting to watch. Michelle, please stand up. I'm just going to introduce Michelle's brand new part of our team. Michelle just started with us. Some of the things the folks do here at College, Michelle and them are through grant funding that we work for other programs. John Keith is not here. John's another member of that as well as the life coaching thing. So we've been very good, and Tracy's been buried in her office with Michelle and Dorsha working on a couple of grants right now. And so we've been very fortunate to obtain those year after year. But these guys, they're not really talking about all the things they do. The beauty of for me is these guys are all self-starters. They're workers. They're dedicated. They work all the city events. They interact with the public very professionally in a positive way. Poor Josh with the dog barking thing, that's a whole other happening. But Josh has taken that for several years ago. That was handled by animal control with constant 200 complaint backlog down to almost zero. A lot of these are handled through mediation, through our Tapestry Commission as well, and some of these neighborhood issues. But as a whole, I'm very proud of the work we do, and especially all the things that we're doing that we've talked about in the past and the growth that we're moving forward in. So I just wanted to get a feel, because this is your people as the crime commissioners. This is your folks here that have your interaction with the public. That's the end of our presentation.
So, Lee, thank you very much for taking the time to introduce these people to us. I think it's, for me, very rewarding to put a face on the people that provide all these services, and it also, I think, is illuminating to realize the depth and width of the programs that these folks are providing for us, and I thank you very much.
Thank you.
I echo those sentiments, absolutely. Great job. I'm sure the city appreciates you and Mr. Dorico, and I know you have your hands full-time sometimes with this gentleman here. I've known him for many years, and
yeah, long time.
Anyway, thank you for the work you do.
One more comment. Having dealt with your office on a few occasions, either for information or to having a report to have a response on, either with this organization, with this commission, or with the CAC, I'm very happy to say that your office is very much capable and very much competent, and a very good team of people.
Yeah, they make me look good. See, they don't need me.
And that's a very,
really,
very difficult task.
But honestly, they're great people, and honestly, what I love about them all is it's that, there's minimal issues with conflicts with schedules and things for folks. But, we do a lot of events in this city, and you'll see this staff out at those events. Not all of them at different times, because they deserve to have a life too as well. And they truly work as ambassadors for this community. And that's really the mentality that we try and adopt as we deal with issues.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I add something?
Absolutely.
Just real quick. I appreciate the staff, and Lee in particular. One of the points we made yesterday in the budget hearing is this is part of our public safety contingent. It's not just sheriffs, and it's not just the public safety office. It's Jocelyn, that's in the city attorney's office, code enforcement, et cetera. And they work really good as a team. But I think Lee does a really good job leading it up and doing the coordination. And we have an advantage that we have a really strong relationship between our public safety office and the sheriff's department that doesn't happen. Another thing that Lee didn't mention is they are very, very good at financially managing contracts, both with the sheriff's department and with animal control, so we don't end up paying for things we shouldn't. As the famous example Lee used is when he took it over and started looking at the animal control invoice, we were getting paid, we were being charged to shelter salamanders and bats and a few other things. So he was able to narrow that down and say, if it's a dog, a cat, or a horse, we're okay. Anything else is on you. So anyway, they do a very nice job.
No, they do. And Mr. Dorico knows I tease him, but absolutely, and they extend to the schools and the education component as well, and we sure appreciate that.
Well, I think what's important for us, and you can see from the sentiment from our council last night talking about this program at AVEA, the job Jennifer and Nigel and John and Brett are doing over there. And I think the thing is that the schools are intricate for us. I will tell you that Paul and Ricky do a heck of a job just with the two of them on the school safety program as just issues that occur around those schools. And then part of the focus is making sure that we relieve them of some of the other things that we task them with, because that's a priority for us. But, you know, the Sheriff's Department does things, the district's under no obligation to have school deputies at a significant expense, but that's part of our partnerships. And we gain a lot of intelligence as regarding crime from the schools, from that interaction. So that we all work together. And I think the beauty of it is that the city functions like that as well. Mark and Jason, our council, have promoted that within the city. We have more of a team atmosphere. People don't circle the wagons around their department and not interact, and I think that makes us function much better as a whole. And so that's the part. Jocelyn has been a huge help as far as identifying these issues we're having with ordinance and make us more expeditious and more appropriate on how we apply them and not so cumbersome. And that is more effective too as well. They're not as confusing. Some of these things, I even read them, trust me, you know, we all know how limited I am, don't we, Dr. Vieira, reading this stuff. So, and if I can't understand it, then there's no way that the public at large is going to understand those issues as we address them. So that's part of our growth, and it's enjoyable. I have fun coming to work. Actually, Christy and them said they were going to do an intervention on me because every year I have a ton of time on the books because I don't take any time up, but I actually have a lot of fun here. So that's part of it.
Very good. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Public business from the floor, non-agendized items. We do have one. Mr. David Paul.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, good morning. It's always a pleasure to come here. I attended the council meeting last night and I saw Mr. DeRico's full presentation on the school, and the only comment I have is what Nigel Holly just said about helping the youth get back on track. I took my boys, they're going to be 15 and 13 this month, and we went as usual to the Memorial Day celebration, and of particular interest to me was a group of kids, the AV Young Marines, and girls are in this group too, and they stood at parade rest the entire time the keynote speaker was talking. And the next day, Tuesday, I asked my oldest son, I said, what did you think about those young Marines? And he said, thank you for not bringing that up till now. I thought I was going to get a lecture. And it just appears to me that that's all these kids need. There are some people that are criminally bent, they're psychopaths, they have lead poisoning. These people are never going to be brought into the fold, but the vast majority of these kids just need someone to sit down and talk to them. So I appreciate that, and everything else that goes on in this city. It is really a jewel. If you look at what other cities do, there's very little of this, and it reflects in the fact that, yes, we have problems, but we have much less problems than some of these other communities are facing. And I appreciate all the work that everybody here does. It's just, like Mr. DeRico said, he likes to come to work just for the joy of it. I come here for the joy of it, to see the amazing things that go on. So thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And in closing, do we have any commissioner comments? Anyone?
I do have one. I was made aware recently of an event that's taking place on Friday, June 12th from 6 to 8. It's the Human Trafficking Awareness Event put on by SARS and DCFS. It's going to be at Eastside High School, and they'll be discussing it's local organizations that will share what they're doing to combat human trafficking right here in the Antelope Valley. And it may seem like a topic that's a great distance away from each and every one of us in this room. However, that only lasts until it happens to one of your children, one of your siblings, one of your nieces or nephews. So it's probably going to be it's going to be worthwhile for everyone to attend, and please do spread the word and fill that theater up so that word can get out.
What time is that at again?
It's at 6 o'clock. It's from 6 to 8, June 12th at Eastside High School. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments, this meeting stands adjourned at approximately 11:30, and our next meeting is scheduled for the 8th of July at 10 a.m. Thank you.